accept that when I come back in October, because there've been too many other people in between you and when I see you, but hopefully not. But let's kind of go around a little bit and say your name, the school that you're at, and then kind of if you've had some experience, if you're brand new to SIPPS, you're in the right place. If you have some experience with any of the programs, you know that too, and that'll kind of help me know a little bit. Trish, do you want to, I want to say, oh, yes. You're what?
I apologize, I'm not looking at.
Oh, no, you don't have to look at anyone. They just need to hear you so they know who you are. So don't be so shy. We're a nice little small group.
I'm really, I'm at the Wilbur School. I'm not familiar with this is my first name. But I had some experience with Wilbur.
All right. Thank you, Lily. No, thank you. You're among friends, so don't worry about that.
Am I supposed to say this?
Just your name, what school you're at, so everybody can kind of place faces, and then what experience you have with SIPPS, if any. And it's okay if you don't, because that's why you're here.
So I'm Angela Dory. I teach 4th, 5th at Spring Creek, and I have absolutely nothing with SIPPS. I've actually never heard of it before coming here, so.
And it's okay, and she's a brand new first year teacher, so yay, just entering our field, and we're happy to have people, we need good quality people, so.
I'm Izzy. I also teach at Spring Creek. I teach kindergarten and 1st grade, and I also have no experience in SIPPS.
And also brand new too, so yay! Two brand new to our. We'll circle around you, Samuel. We'll give you a chance to get settled.
I'm Casey Weber. I work at Oak Creek. This would be my 2nd year fully utilizing SIPPS. For that.
Shauna, Oak Creek, K12, also my second year.
Anna, Oak Creek, I teach 7th and 8th, and I did a little bit of SIPPS last year.
Okay, I'm Darcy Arnold. I teach literacy intervention in this building. And
I was going to say, wait, I didn't see you this week, but maybe I've already forgot that. Okay, good.
I know where the SIPPS materials are located in this building, and that is all the knowledge I have.
That's all right. See, I told you were all among friends here.
Hi, I'm Mayan in Dallas. I work with Darcy, so basically what she said, copy paste.
Okay, all right, got it.
I'm Kayla Wackling. I also work with RCNA here at the elementary school. I previously worked at Lakeview, and I have taken a couple SIPPS training, but never utilized it.
All right, well, thank you.
Dakota Wackling, Lakeview, 3rd through 5th this year, and just kind of pretty new to SIPPS.
My name is Jocelyn, and I'm a para in the physics class at Lakeview, and I have very little.
You're in the right place. Thank you.
I'm Tess Bennett. I teach at Littlebird, and when I was supposed to use SIPPS, I made Roka do it.
Honesty at its best.
Than anybody.
Honesty at its best.
Okay, fine. Fine, all grades I have, and I have taught at everyone except books.
She has. Roka could be right here next to me the whole time. Yes, she could. She's being very modest. So, yeah, not only has she taught out of all the sections, but she's the only one that teaches all the kids, because Klein is all by itself, and now Tessa gets to have that this year at Littlebird. She's
It's to have that.
she has the honor of. It's all how you got to spin it. All right, and Trish, do you want to introduce kind of your new role?
I'm Trish Knox. I taught here in Todd County for 36 years. This is my first year retired, and I have to say I love it. But I am
something to aim for.
I'm coming back for travel money to consult on SIPPS. I've utilized SIPPS. We started at Rosebud. We utilized it for 5 years. We got the program in the 3rd through 5th grades, so it's pretty much, I think, a well-oiled machine, and working to get it with the lower grades being consistent as well. And my role is to support you guys and to come out and I'll be coming in October with her, but then after that, I'll be coming on my own on a different week. And my role is mainly to kind of support as far as suggestions on how you know, questions you have on getting the lessons to fit in your time frame, organizing, the routines, things like that, as far as getting it going. I am not a person to do training. I don't have that expertise, but anyway, that's what I'll be doing. I'll be coming October, November, January, February, March. And we try to schedule my weeks so that it's not when you have a bunch of other trainers coming in. So
And I'm super excited about that because I can only share, I mean, I can kind of watch you or listen to you or answer your questions, but then I'm gone again. And you know, and then you need somebody else right away. So I'm so excited that Tricia's here to help it go.
We did find at Rosebud there were some things that, you know, like it tells you 30 to 40 minutes for the lesson, get the whole lesson in. You know, there's some tweaks we've done that for our students here on Rosebud that, you know, we feel like they work a little better. You know, without changing the program itself, just tweaking it a little bit. So
make it fit. Yeah. And I'll help you with lots of little ideas as we go through today about this is kind of how it's designed, but this is how it still works. Kids, you got real kids with real schedules and real, you know, it's not always that way. So I'm happy that Tricia's here. She's going to go ahead and videotape this, which I absolutely hate. But I do it because you know. So know that that's available. So if there's someone who couldn't come and you say this was well worth the time, and I'd like you to be able to see this too. Know that that's going to be available. Samuel, would you like to introduce yourself? You were just saying our name, what school we're at, and our experience with SIPPS so far.
Samuel Eastwind. I teach 6th to 8th ELA at Eagle Middle School, and this is my first time interacting with any sort of teaching material. So, yep.
So there we go. You're in good hands. So as you heard when everyone else was introducing themselves. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. Whoops. There's long on the slide. First, I want you to take just a little bit of a minute. Let's ground our work. I'm going to be telling you about a program, and I'm going to be sharing with that program kind of where it fits in this whole big scheme of literacy, because it fills the hole for, I think, a super important part. But it's not the end-all, be-all of what kids need to have as readers. So take just a second and kind of reflect on what are your hopes for your students as readers this year. So thinking about those kids you interact with during the day, what are your hopes for them? And then share at your table.
That's like, I said significant growth. I feel like some of them are starting to grow.
What do they feel successful? I feel like they're learning something, getting it instead of just going through the same once it's a successful progress. Engaging.
All right, let me pull you back. So as I was walking around, I heard lots of good things. I heard independent, engaged, enjoyment. What else? Anybody else have anything else that you said? What's some other things that you said? It's a good thing I'm walking around eavesdrop, isn't it?
I just want mine to do routines, like kindergarten, first and second graders. It's just be able to do the routines of the read, spell, read.
Yeah,
That's what I want from my
Okay, all right. Because you know if they have those routines down, they're gonna progress as readers. Yep. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about when we think about the session today. You're gonna learn about the SIPPS instruction across the levels. So I'll let you kind of know how the levels go across. We're gonna look at some of the instructional routines that are in there, just like Sean had mentioned the routines. And then we're gonna do some things to help you prepare to launch it. But it's really kind of be a big overview so that you can kind of see how it fits. I might be using some terms that are new to you. I know for Samuel. Oh, did he stepped out? Okay, all right. I know when I met with him, he's middle school. So he said, well, first tell me what SIP stands for. So I told him. He was like, and what are those terms? Because for a lot of people, who remembers when they learned how to read that remembers what's phonemic awareness, what's phonics, what are sight words, It's okay if those terms aren't in your wheelhouse because you'll grow as yourself in that kind of knowledge when you're implementing, and that's absolutely fine. All right, so kind of where does SIPPS fit in that whole literacy road that you're learning? So we have to think about, we've got Scarborough did a lot of different research and gathered a bunch of stuff and kind of said, let's use this idea about a road. So reading as a road. So we have language comprehension. So we know the end result of reading is being able to understand what someone communicated to us in written form. But there's a lot of stuff to it. How I comprehend something may be different than how you comprehend based on my background knowledge, what I'm bringing to the piece, based on my vocabulary knowledge. Understanding how did the author structure this information? Am I able to understand it that way? Thinking about my verbal reasoning. I can decode every word in a sentence, but I may not be able to understand what that sentence is meaning. And then what's my literacy knowledge? Meaning if I see a word that's made up of some meaningful parts, do I know what those meaningful parts are? So we say that that's the language comprehension, but it's also made up of the word recognition. Before I can do these things, you do a lot of work in your younger grades doing this with listening. So you'll have a read aloud, you'll do a lot of discussion about it. Because we always want to keep building our kids' their listening comprehension, because that will be their potential reading comprehension. But we also know we've got to teach them, how do you even decode or figure out what all these letters on a page mean? We have 26 letters, but we have about 45 sounds because they have different combinations. And we have to teach our kids to know, first of all, how do words even work? So not only do you need to know the letters and the sounds, but a different order of those letters creates a different word. And for kids to understand that is a big deal. So we start out by playing around with the sounds of words so kids can hear the individual sounds. They start to understand beginning sound, middle sound, ending sound. We work with them with letting them know the phonics part. So these are letters that are attached to that sound. We do some spelling work with them so now that they get to apply what they know about those letters. And then we know there's all those words that don't fit any of these things that we just talked about. So we call those sight words. And we want kids to get good enough with this. We want them to continue to increase their automaticity, that they're able to start to do that on the run when they're reading, and then that will help the young skilled readers. At the beginning, our brand new emergent readers spend a lot of cognitive brain work just figuring out what a word is. But as they get better at that, then they're able to start to decode on the run, and they can spend more time giving their cognitive brain power to thinking about what's the author telling them. But it takes all of that to get to our skilled reading. And it's always a work in progress. I'd like to say that all of our kids get to that at the same time. So I'd like to say all of our kids start here in kindergarten and they just keep marching all the way through. But we know that's not true. We know our kids come to us anywhere along that road to literacy, and we have to use different data points to figure out where are they so we can get them at their point of need. So when we're thinking about SIPPS helps right here. So we're gonna do a little bit of this as we go, but this is our goal. We think about those very foundations of learning how to be a reader. First is the print concepts. So even understanding that when we're looking at a book that we go from front to back, that we read left to right, that the words on the page match the picture. So those are all kinds of just print concepts, that we have spaces between words. And then next comes that playing around with the sounds of words and understanding that left to right. Then we attach letters to it. We have what we're working with the sight words and their automaticity to be able to do it. So this is the work of SIPPS. And it fits in with the big, all the big places there. Questions about any stuff that I just got? I told you a whole bunch of stuff, and you don't have to know all that stuff. But I gave you so you have some context as to SIPPS is not your end-all be-all reading, but it does hit your foundations. Because if you can't figure out what that word is on the page, you really can't do any of the other stuff. So that's where it is.
Even though I'm the author.
There we go. All right, so SIPPS is an acronym for Systematic Instruction, so meaning that we follow it along in developmentally appropriate ways of phonological awareness, phonics, and sight words. So that's the acronym. So that's what the acronym stands for. Whoops, wrong way. All right, here are the levels. One of the things that this is an intervention. So it's designed to go fast-paced and close the gaps so that we can get kids back into their core, where their core work is happening. I'm going to tell you about each part of each as we go along, but know that this is what the manuals look like, and it has to do with the level of knowledge that they already have. Let you listen. Dr. Scheffelbein is kind of one of the main authors that helped put all this together. Let's see if I can touch it. Get it going.
Remember, she didn't get the touch screen set up.
She did. Thank you.
You said you were going to use a clicker.
Because I told her, I don't need the touch
Yep.
The content of SIPPS is carefully chosen. We like to sort of say that it's comprehensive, it's powerful, but lean. In terms of phonemic awareness, there are a lot of different aspects of phonemic awareness that you can teach. SIPPS initially concentrates on the two most critical phonemic awareness tasks, blending and segmentation. Because SIPPS says if those kids can't blend and they can't segment, you shouldn't waste time on other aspects of phonemic awareness, such as rhyming, such as manipulation. We do teach rhyming, we do teach manipulation, but we want to make sure these critical aspects are done first. In terms of phonics, SIPPS teaches high frequency, high utility phonic relationships. We don't worry about spelling patterns that aren't very common or consistent. For example, you would not see us teaching anything for OUGH because words with the OUGH have any variety of sounds. We do not teach EY as in they because it's not very common. Basically, we want to teach phonics that gives the biggest bang for the buck and not take too much time with relevant phonics. In terms of sight words, we teach high frequency irregular sight words. This makes all the sense in the world because why waste time on sight word instruction when the kids could sound those words out on their own, rather work on the high frequency words that they can't sound out. By the way, a little advantage of teaching these high frequency sight words, we use the read, spell, read strategy. And because they're spelling these words out by letter name as a way of trying to remember them, they end up becoming better spellers of those gray words that are hard to spell. So that's sort of a little added advantage. SIPPS follows a developmental sequence. It separates reading into 3 distinct levels.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about this.
The content of SIPPS.
Sorry, there we go. I've given you a lot of information so far. Any questions, or do I need to give you a little time to kind of digest that at your table really quick? I'm going to do that. I'm just going to give you a minute, kind of talk about what I've said already. How does that fit in with what you already know? And I'm going to give you a couple minutes to digest it, and then I'll move on.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know how to fix that. It's fish. And we're moving on to the next portion of the lesson.
It's very less of a structure.
All right, let me pull you back again. Any questions that bubbled up at your table or any comments that would be good for everyone else? So why don't you talk at your tables? I know you have to talk. All right, well then let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to kind of go through with each of those books that you saw and tell you what it is. So when we think about that road to becoming literate, there are certain phases that all readers go through. Now, do they all start that phase when they're 5? No. Do they all progress at the same time? No. And that's why I don't want you to be thinking about necessarily grade level kids. I just want you to think about, oh, I'm thinking about kids in my classroom, and that's kind of where they are. This is where they are. So the very simplest, or the very beginning to that road to becoming literate, is called the simple alphabetic phase. In that phase, that's the SIPPS beginning. Kids are going to learn all of their single consonant sounds. They're going to learn short vowels. They're going to be able to identify initial sounding, medial sound, and the ending sounding words. They're going to be able to blend reading and be able to read and spell those CVC words. And we'll introduce towards the end of beginning consonant diagrams. So it's that very beginning level that kids are at. Whoops, all right, going backwards. This is the stuff that came with your beginning level. I'm just going to very quickly go through that. You've got the binder, you have the site, the story posters. We'll spend some time with that today because I think that's one of the trickiest routines. You have a box of the little books, but you also have a reproducible of the stories. You have 2 boxes of sound cards and sight word cards. You have the sound cards that you post. We'll talk about this a little bit too. You have learning letter names. Before kids can start in SIPPS, we want them to have a certain number of letter names that they know. Not the sounds, but just recognize the letter names. And we'll talk about why. But that comes with the learning letter names. The next phase that kids move into is called the spelling pattern phase. So this is simple alphabetic. One sound or one letter is one sound. But now we're moving them into the spelling pattern. So we'll teach them inflectional endings, S, D, ing, and what happens to a word when we add that ending to it. We'll do consonant blends. We'll do consonant digraphs like an STR, stroke. We'll do long vowels. We start with the final E, and then we introduce all the other vowel patterns. We do the R control vowels. We do the diphthongs like I. We do silent letters like G and K. We do the 2 sounds for C, the hard soft sound, and the 2 sounds for G. And then we introduce them to 2 syllable decoding. So heavy stuff right here. 55 lessons here. And you can pretty much keep a nice pace of going from one lesson to the next to the next. 40 lessons here, and many times you'll be doing an A list, which is your first day that you teach, and then going back and doing a B list, and doing you'll find that you slow down a little bit with that because there's a lot of information. This is what comes with it. Again, your teacher, your binder. This is what their storybook looks like, and it starts to have chapters, so we can start to build that holding on to what's happened the day before the story. You're going to have 2 sets of sound cards. You're going to have the sight word cards and the sound cards, and then you're going to have some sound letter cards. I'm going to share these letter cards with you later on. This is one of the things that when I first started teaching SIPPS, I've been teaching for a long time already, and I thought, why didn't I ever think about this? For instance, like the cake card that you see here is a long A sound, cake, A. And then you have all the different spellings of A on that card. So powerful for kids. All right, the next part is plus. Plus covers the same things that happen right here. So this beginning, all these beginning skills in the simple alphabetic, as well as the spelling pattern. But plus is for our older readers. So our older readers are going to come to the table with a lot of knowledge, but we also know they probably have some goals here. And so plus not only has the words that they're going to practice these skills in are going to be words that are respectful that they're an older reader. And what they practice reading in is respectful of that too. So when we look at that, you've got your binder, you've got your 2 sets of cards, but you have this book called Dreams on Wheels that already looks like a chapter book. But the stories in the book are, we control the vocabulary, we control what they're going to use in the book, so there's no guessing. Many times, by the time our older readers have gotten to 4th grade and above, they've learned some skills that aren't conducive to reading, but they've been survival skills for them in classrooms where they weren't readers. And so they've learned how to look like a reader and turn the page at times when they're supposed to. They may skip words, they might mumble through them if they're telling you to read. And they've been making guesses. But with Dreams on Wheels, the passages that they're going to practice, they're only practicing sight words that you've already taught them and sound combinations you've already taught them. So there's no guessing. And usually a lot of times when I work with plus kids, they're like this at first. Because they've been there, done that. This is a skill that they've already decided they're not good at, and they don't want to sit through it again. But as they start to be able to read, really read for the first time for a long time, they become a lot more confident. You'll see them start sitting up straighter, and that'll overflow to all the other areas of their academic. So plus is my favorite. Even though I like the other two, plus is my favorite because it literally saves kids. You know, in those upper grades, these kids that are here, 4th grade above, don't have phonics every day like the kids in younger grades do. This literally saves them and helps them become literate. I've used it with high school kids before. I've used it with adult learners that just missed out on all of this. It's super effective. On to the next section. So this was our simple alphabetic, our spelling pattern, same thing but for older readers. And then you have the polysyllabic morphemic stage. That's the highest level of phonics. And in the challenge, we're going to be introducing them to the 6 different syllable types. And if you know those types, what it does to the vowels. So we'll teach them, we start out by doing open and closed. They're going to learn where do I divide a word into syllables. They're going to learn all about affixes, so suffixes and prefixes. They're going to learn about sight syllables. So instead of teaching them sight words, we teach them sight syllables to recognize, like T-I-O-N. You can't sound that out, but you recognize that as a sight syllable. We're going to teach them about the schwa. You know, here they learn all the things, but then we get them into polysyllabic or more than 1 syllable words. And now all of a sudden we have vowels that make a sound. And it could be any one of the vowels make an sound. And we teach them how to deal with that. We're going to teach them meaningful morphemes. Phoneme means 1 single sound. Morphemes means a bigger chunk of sound. And so we're going to teach them things like by and try. That when we see by, it means 2. So we're not only teaching them what that word section is, but we're also giving them the vocabulary of it. So when they encounter big words, they've got something to bring to the table to help them figure out what that big word is. So a lot of Latin and Greek roots are in there. The first year I taught challenge, I was like, you know, that, I thought I was a pretty good reader. Well, I am a pretty good reader, but I learned so much in challenge that there were days that I felt not very smart at all because I learned so much. And then we're going to do lots of different academic vocabulary with that. Roka, I know that you're teaching challenge this year. You want to say anything about that? It's way different than these.
Out of all of them, I would say it was the hardest one to learn.
Yeah.
But after you get it, it's fun easier. But it was, when I started it, it's like, oh my gosh, I called Kathy so many times, like, KKD, and like, I don't know how to do it there.
Yeah. It is, but then once you get it, it's kind of going to be what you all feel about these at first. And then these all follow the same kind of pattern and structure. We'll see that a bit. This is different than that. This is very short lessons, and they don't have a text that they practice in because they have everything that they need. They can read books, but I usually have them like keep a sticky note or something, and as they're reading the regular textbook, if they come across the word that they're not sure what it is, they bring that, and we'll talk about what they know about that word. All right, so with SIPPS Challenge, not very much comes. The sound charts, you don't have to do a chart, you just have a reference for it. But you also, instead of sight words, you have that irregular sight syllables that you post that they reference. And again, they don't have sight words, they have the syllables. You do have an option to do some phonics with them. It's at the very beginning of the lesson. If there's some parts that they need. Okay, so there's the whole thing. And remember, it fits in that great big literacy window as that foundation piece. Okay, again, let you kind of debrief very, very quickly. I'll give you 30 seconds to talk about what you just saw. If you have any questions, I'm going to give you time to own this. I don't want to be doing all the talking.
No, like I was just noticing like the SIPPS beginning class, it's like the focus ones on there, like single constitutional vowels, it's like similar to what we're using the literacy footprints that we have.
We're following that same. Yes.
How many letters are you expecting? I think you said something right, but I kind of confused. You expecting to kind of know your letter names ends?
No.
Or just the name?
Just
okay, perfect. It's hiding somewhere in my pocket.
I just look at the kids I was going to see. I've already tested some of these kids, and they passed the plus.
Like you did all the way
Just for some, I just wanted to see how the kids like did tested like a 38 or a 40 on their DRA, if they were actually being blessed at all.
Right.
I didn't go to the challenge. I'm not going to attempt the challenge only until I get the course.
I think you, I guess it just sticks to them.
I'm sorry, yeah, I actually did. I only did one or two. I did 8. And he actually passed all of them. He's a strong some kids so far that's just stronger than others. They might DRA and they're still
So it should be on there, but I haven't assessed it.
Right, this program.
All of my kids who passed,
Especially the third.
qualified for SIPPS are in your classes.
Younger grades, did you use it for all your kids?
Should be, or no, I did. And then Phoenix also.
Similar to the old selling season. Because I found that church they didn't love it. Like my kids were so young and they
Oh,
it was so
you're
good.
good.
that all the sight words say
Oh, so you
And they know what they're doing, which is good for them too. I mean,
how did you do the
they don't
Yeah.
feel
And we'll walk through a lesson. Through all those things. It's like I'm lighting up the morning, lots of confusion.
Okay.
All right. Did you have a question or just? Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. So you've got some background knowledge on that road to literacy. You've got some background knowledge where does SIPPS fit in that whole thing. And they're giving you some background knowledge of what those foundational skills look like. So, again, it's an intervention. We don't want to start every kid out at the very beginning with their letter sounds. Maybe they know much more than that. So you're going to have a placement test. The placement test, though, is still kind of broad. And so I want you to think when you've got the results of your placement test, it's going to help you know where to start them. But as you're going along, some kids will, all of a sudden, they just learn a couple little things and it all makes sense to them and they'll move forward. So keep that in mind. There's going to be 2 placement tests. One is for K3 and one is for 412. The actual assessment looks exactly the same. It's just where do they place. Remember, if they're K3, they're going to be using beginning and extension. But if they're 4 through 12, I want to know where they're going to place in plus. Same skills, that's why the test looks exactly the same.
The test isn't the same.
Well, it just doesn't have the same learning letter names.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah,
Thanks for pointing that out.
Exactly, yeah.
The very first thing on your placement test is, are they even ready for SIPPS? So they need to recognize those letters first, so we know where we're ready to go. But then after that, and we're not asking 4 through 12, but if you do have some wonderings, I've had kids that I kind of assumed knew all their letters. I had that with one of Tessa's kids. And I thought, oh, she's an older kid coming in. I'll just start her right here. And then when I realized as we were doing sounds and blending, I better go back and find out because I think she has some confusions about her letters. So don't always assume, because you may need to check them with the letters. Casey, I saw your hand.
No, I'm sure.
All right. Please feel free to shout out. When you do the placement assessment, you're going to have, let's see if I have another thing. No, I don't. And I didn't want to spend the time looking at it here. I'll just kind of talk it out. And please jump in whenever Trish, you ask something. Or any of you that have done it already. The placement assessment, you're gonna have them do their letter sounds, and then you're gonna get to a part where they need to blend. A lot of kids will fall apart there because that's what they don't have. They can tell you the sounds of their letters, but they don't understand how those letters can blend in to make a word. And so but you'll find that out when you're doing the assessment. You're also going to assess them on some sight words. But when you read the assessment, it's going to tell you if they pass this and this, and it's going to tell you what a passing score is. You're going to move on to the next section. It's also but it's not going to base where you're moving on their sight word knowledge. We want to know what their sight words are, whether we need to give them some intervention on that. But when they place in one of the SIPPS manuals, and somewhere in that SIP manual, it's going to be based on their phonics knowledge, not their sight word knowledge. Okay. In 2nd and 3rd grade, when you're doing a kindergarten first, normally we don't even assess kindergartners until the 2nd semester because we're going to start with letter sounds. And we want to give them a chance to get exposed to that and pick up on that in their core classroom because that's what they're teaching. But if we get towards 2nd quarter, maybe end of 2nd quarter, and we've got kids that have been exposed to all the letters in their kindergarten classroom, they're not really picking up any of them, then we'll want to get them into learning letter names. Remember I showed you that as part of SIPPS before to help them get their speech and get into SIPPS. You're also going to have the extension. You see this R1. Many of your kids that are going to place, they might place in R1. That stands for Review 1. There are 15 review lessons. Those 15 lessons, review those consonant sounds and short vowels. Sometimes that's all our kids need. They need that kind of quick review in those 15 lessons, and they're ready to move on to all the other things that you saw in that talking extension. Sometimes, though, they need more than a review. So we'll place them in review, but then you'll know after the first mastery test, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, that they need to slow down. So then the test will say, go ahead and place them wherever that is, either 21, 31, or 41. It'll tell you that. And the reason it does that is because we want to give kids in 2nd, 3rd grade the benefit of the doubt. That if we just spend some time with some reviewing, they're bringing enough other knowledge, then I can move them to extension 1 and keep going, so that I can close that gap sooner. But know that some kids need much more than that, and that's okay. So use your judgment. I usually would have 50% of the kids I place in review 1, I need to put back in the beginning, because they don't need a review, they need the instructions, so they go back. For some of the kids, that's all they need. When you're doing your placement assessment, if they're just barely making it, then you might want to just go ahead and put them where they need to be, just because you already know they're going to need a lot more. So that's a tricky part in the placement test I like to talk about. But if you have some of those when you're doing, go to some of the teachers in your school that have done placement, and they'll help you decide, what do I do? And it's not, if you feel like this placement just gives you a good idea where to start. It's not the end all be all. You can move kids. There's guidance in the placement assessment that helps you know where to place them. They've also got some considerations in there. I told you about the grades 2 to 3 extension review already. Use the error analysis. So when you're doing the placement, I usually keep my hand moving the whole time, so that I'm doing it here. And so I'm doing a check if they got it correct. I just reviewed Casey's with him a minute ago, and he did the little dots if there was a pause before they got it right, which gives you a whole lot more information. If whatever their errors are, gives you a whole lot of information. So write down as much as you can. If they self-correct, they give you one thing and then they change it, that tells you information. It means they have it, but they're not necessarily really secure with it. So write down all of that stuff when you're doing your placement assessment. So then when you're looking at them and you're grouping your kids, that's going to kind of help you say, these are kids with like needs, or these are kids. So write down as much as you can. Trish, anything to say about placement?
Yeah, myself, it says in the thing, if they don't respond instantly, they don't know it instantly. And the thing with this is you want them to know it instantly. And so if they're having to take that pause, they don't really know it for sure. And so in my experience, it always counted as a miss. Like even if they, get going and they say it and then they correct, it's wrong, but I'll put a note that they corrected and got it right because they didn't know it instantly. Because that's what you're working for, is for them to know it instantly. So there's something in there that they really do need to be, especially like if they're on the border, they missed, or they got 7 out of 10. One of the 7 was one that they thought about. Well, then they didn't really pass it.
And Trish brings up a really good point, because remember, these are foundation skills. So think about, we're building that house of literacy on this foundation. And they have to know these things. They have to be solid. Because if they don't, that's a hole that's going to crop up somewhere else down the road, and you're going to be reteaching. So it's better to back up, go slow, so you can go fast later on. And it seems counterproductive, because you're like, but these kids are this age, and I need to get them caught up. Don't let any of that interfere at all with what you're thinking. Go back. Because if you're bringing kids back and you're not sure, you're not hurting them, you're just making them stronger and more confident where they are. But if you push them a little bit farther, then it may be too fast for them, and then their confidence is going to go down, and we're going to be creating some more holes than we intend. So go slow to go fast later on, and be very mindful of that, because we're looking at kids to have this, and if they don't, we want to instruct on that and give them good practice on that.
Just to add up a too, like I have some, like you said, third, but I'll have
Introduce
some
yourself real quick.
Oh, I'm Samantha Johnson. I'm at Spring Creek. But I have one that I assessed this year that like she can read them, but she reads really slow. So that pace is there, like she's responding right away, but as she's going through it, it's really slow. It's not that fast like my kids that know them do it. So she's going in that lower group because they need to be fast.
Yeah.
They have to be automatic. Remember I talked earlier, if we're spending a lot of cognitive figuring out the words, we don't have brain power left to figure out, what did I just read? What does this mean? And we want to get to where kids where every word becomes a virtual sight word for them because they're able to figure out automaticity. Good, thank you. All right, I've talked about readiness before, but let me kind of say it. On your placement assessment on the K3, they'll have where they are just going to name their letters. No sounds, just name their letters. And we like to say we want them to have 20 letter names before we put them in the SIPPS. We've got a data-driven answer that says that kids that know at least 20 letter names are better equipped to move on to more of those complex. Like if I know the name of the letter, I'm prepared to learn the name of the sound. But we also know that, and the practical answer is kids that come to us that have a lot of letter knowledge usually have a lot of those print concept knowledge too. They usually know that letters represent words and that words tell a story and how a book works. But we also are going to be doing this read, spell, read, repeating the sight words. They can't use phonics for sight words, so instead we do read, spell, read, kind of like when you're learning a phone number or something else that you have to memorize. It's not a unit by itself, so you have to learn the pieces. So we're going to be doing that. If they don't know enough of their letters, it's hard for them to engage in that routine, so now they have a hard time learning those sight words. However, I say that if I'm looking at kindergartner and early first grade, I want them to know those 20 letter names because they probably don't have all those print concepts either because they're emerging leaders. But I'm looking at a second grader, a third grader, I'm not holding them back to this 20. If they're about at that 17 or so, that's good enough because I can keep practicing those others and catch them up. I'm not going to wait because we need to start closing that gap for them. All right, so I told you where letter names is a whole other section that comes with your SIPPS. It's just one lesson. We're going to teach them the capital and lowercase. When you're doing the assessment and the placement, it's just the lowercase. Many kids know their capitals because they know it from a lot of environmental print. As a matter of fact, you'll see they go back to most of the time when emerging writers write a bunch of capitals because it's the little squigglies that don't have too much difference with the lowercase. It's harder for them to figure out or discriminate what that letter is. So we're testing them on their lowercase.
Is that the set that, like, when we needed to use that for some of our students, we had to order that, the learning letter names?
Now it comes with the fourth edition.
So, okay.
So check your edition.
Check to make sure that if you need to use it, check to make sure that you have it. Otherwise, you'd need to get it ordered.
Yeah, it comes automatically now with fourth edition, but you're right. If you have third edition, it's an added.
Yeah.
Same thing when I went through what those materials are. If any of you in your room can't find all your materials, go to your principal. And then she might know where they are, especially if you're brand new. She might know where they are. Otherwise, your principals are going to let Jody know, and we'll fill in for you. Okay. All right. So let's talk about. I kind of given you this big bird's eye view of what SIPPS looks like. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. So each of the lessons very structured. So it happens in a specific order every single day. Not only is that helpful for you, but it's really comforting for the kids. So now the kids don't have to wonder, what am I supposed to do? They know what to do. So we can keep just amping up what they're doing in that structure. Your big thing though, when you're first teaching SIPPS, are what we call the core C's. Parents usually have a really easier job learning how to implement SIPPS than teachers. And the reason I say that is, the parents are going to come in and they're going to look to see what they're supposed to say, and they're going to say it. It's us teachers that tend to muddy it all up because we've got all this information we want to give our kids that are right in front of us, and we mess it up and talk too much. SIPPS is very, very streamlined. If you're a really efficient SIPPS teacher, you're going to only say a handful of words. You might say blend, you might say read, you might say sound, you might say again, you might say spell. It's only a handful because the kids are doing all the work. They're doing the work the whole time. You're not going to be saying sounds for them. You're going to teach them how to reference the sound cards. You're not going to be spelling sight words for them. You're going to teach them where to find it on their sight word list. So you need to be very clear, but also very consistent with that language, very consistent with your hand motions, very concise with what you say, and we ask kids to have a choral response. At first, this was very difficult for me. The concise was super difficult, and then the choral response. And let me tell you why choral response. So if this was my SIPPS group right here, and I went around saying, your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn, I have just now decreased the amount of practice you got in SIPPS. We want kids to have 100% practice, 100% of the time. There's also safety in numbers. If I'm not quite sure what that sound is, I can listen to the other people. If I'm really quiet and shy at the beginning, I'm gonna get more confident as I go along. Also, if you were like me, I was very, very shy in school. If I was in this group and I'd be already looking down, if I'm reading a list of words, I'd be already counting down what my turn's gonna be, and I'd be trying to figure it out before it got to my turn. And it caused a lot of anxiety to me. Once I read it, would I pay any attention to the rest? No. I'm like, whew, my turn is over until the next time. So how much practice did I get out of that? And how did it elevate? And that's going to build a lot of your kids, because this is not their strength. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing SIPPS with them because their strength. So choral response is super important for our students, but it's really super important for you too, because as I'm listening, as I'm doing sound cards or sight word cards, or they're reading a list, I'm listening to how the kids are responding. So I'm actually being able to do observation assessment throughout the lesson. So if I hear someone that makes an error, then I can go into the corrective response, and you'll see those in the corrective routines for the whole group. I don't point out who made the error. Instead, I do it for the whole group, because it makes the group stronger. And I'll show you what some of those corrections look like in a minute. So as difficult as choral response is, it's vital that you do it for a lot of reasons. It's going to keep the lessons going fast. Everyone's going to be engaged the whole time. My kids that maybe weren't model students when they were with me in the regular classroom were model students when they were in SIPPS. Because number one, I'm teaching them right where they need, and they're learning, they're doing it, but they're engaged in the content. And so don't let that get.
What do you think the division of labor should be between yourself and if you have a para, your para? Like, how many lessons should you take over? How many lessons should they take over?
It's going to be not so much lessons as it is levels of kids.
Okay.
And I usually say, I still want the teacher to be responsible for those lowest kids, because they're going to need to be supporting them all the rest of the day. We'll leave the mid to higher kids that need. There's some kids that need support to our parents, since we can check in on them a little bit more. And they probably don't have as far to go either, so dividing it that way. if you're gonna be dividing it up, if you just have one group and you're dividing it in a 4-day week, I'd wanna make sure that either you're splitting up sometime during the week or switching off weeks, because again, as a teacher, that 30-minute lesson is not gonna change them as readers. It's gonna help, but they need that practice all day long, and you as a teacher need to know that. You need to know that information. So you can still share it and divide it, but make sure it's not these kids, I'm gonna have my pair help these kids all the time. Instead, sometimes your pair is with your whole group and then you're doing some lessons. Make sure there's a good control of that.
I was gonna say, I know there's some classrooms, and it just depends, but there's some classrooms where the teacher has like the reading groups and is doing these things while the para is pulling and doing the SIPPS groups.
Yep.
It
all depends.
It depends on schedules and
it depends on how your parents feel about it too. You know, you gotta kind of you make the best of your resources that you have. Some grade levels that have more teachers and more classrooms of that same level even kind of switch kids to make it fewer groups that they have. But you know, I know a lot of you don't even have that luxury. So yeah, just make it work. And Trish is really going to be someone who could help kind of beat that out at your school too, because they've had a gazillion scenarios in the 5 years of SIPPS that she's probably encountered whatever you might have, and she can really help you support that. Okay, good question. Thank you, Cynthia. All right. Oh, also in every single lesson, you're going to introduce kids to skills, but they're going to do lots and lots of review of those skills so they give them. Again, many kids that we're intervening for are really just kids, number one, that weren't ready to hear the phonics in the core because they were back here still, or they're the kids that need a whole lot more practice for it to stick for them. And so we introduce skills, they have lots of review, and then we give them the opportunity to apply that skill in one lesson. So every lesson, you may or may not be introducing things, but they're always reviewing and they're always applying their skills. All right, so now I've kind of told you the big deals about it. Let's look at that. What does that structured lesson look like? It happens in this order every single time. Beginning has rereading a story, so only a beginning. But everybody else, we're always going to start with phonological awareness. You're going to blend, and remember that's only a sound, no letters. We're going to be blending sounds into words. We're going to be blending syllables in the upper grades, in the farther along in extension. We're going to be segmenting words or segmenting syllables. And then the next part we do is phonics. So now we've been playing around with those sounds and thinking about the order that we hear things. Now we're going to attach the letters to it. So we're either going to be introducing new letter sounds or we're going to be reviewing them with the cards. And then the next part is sight words. We're going to be introducing a new sight word, or we're going to be reviewing those sight words with that read, spell, read. So I like to look at this part of the lesson as your instruction of the pieces. But now this part of the lesson is they're applying those pieces. So reading a story, and then the guided spell. The fluency practice is probably going to happen outside of your SIPPS time, but the fluency practice is where they get time to go back and reread those stories. And we're going to do a lot of that. You've got to make sure for your SIPPS kids, really all of your kids, that they have a lot of practice time to read. They're going to grow as readers if they've got text in front of them that they can read. All right, elements of challenge, a little bit different. Oh, yep.
Are there like suggested like grade appropriate reading lists that cater to like the levels people are at? Because if I have an 8th grader who's at a 1st grade reading level, that 8th grader doesn't want to read.
There's a SIPPS there's SIPPS libraries.
There's SIPPS fluency libraries that you can also have, and then they'll also have the book called Rooms on Wheels to practice in. They'll have the actual physical book, and you can also download, and they'll have the the electronic version of the same story that they could look at on their book or whatever device they
In
have.
the SIPPS Fluency Library for the plus level, they have a lot of the books are like one book that might be in a series of books. So then there would be other titles you could order by that are the similar format.
Because you want to make sure, even though they're upper level readers, if they're not practicing in text that they can read, they're not going to grow as a reader. They're going to slip back to those habits that did not promote reading, pretend reading, guessing, skipping over words. That doesn't promote this. All right, so just very quickly, just for your knowledge, because most of you are not going to be teaching challenge, you have a single syllable phonics review. That's an optional. You can keep up their phonics. You're going to start out, the first lessons are about syllabic transformations, where you're going to be changing, they'll be playing around with open and closed syllables, and it depends on where the vowel is, whether the vowel's long or short. And then you're going to do more phonemic transformations, meaning like if I had a word like respect, disrespect, respectful, respecting, you're going to be doing all of those different things with those words. They're going to learn to read by syllables, and then they're going to be able to break a big word down into little parts and then make entire words, inside syllables. They also have guided spelling, and then again, you'll want to have them continue to practice. All right, throughout your manual for you, with Collaborative Classroom, which is like the parent company of SIPPS, and you all have to be a reader, a writer. All of those programs come under the umbrella of Collaborative Classroom. Collaborative Classroom feels that not only is it important to give you really good stuff, but support you in implementing that. Because if you have a box of the very best material, but you have no support in how to use that material, you're at a loss. So our big deal is to give you all that support. So you're going to see QR codes in your manual. If you hold your phone over, pop's going to be a teacher teaching that routine. So you'll be able to read about it, but you'll be able to see what it looks like. You'll be able to get online on the portal, and you'll be able to see an entire lesson so that you can see, what does this look like in practice? But you also have what are called instructional self-checks. So intermingled among your book, you'll have at the end of the lesson, it'll say you as the implementer. Are you doing this, this, and this? Make sure. If you're seeing this with your kids, are you making sure you're doing this? So it'll be just like if Trish or I were sitting right next to you and we'd say, hey, you've really got a good handle on this part. But you know what? This might make you a little bit more effective if you did this. But we won't be there. So if you want to take like a screenshot of this, and then you'll recognize it because it's at the end of the lesson. And they're really worthy of looking at your first year especially. And then if you've been teaching for a while and you kind of slip into a comfort area, they're really nice. I got that? I'm going to send this to you too. So, all right. So we collect data the whole time. How do we know whether we move on or not? How do we know whether it's a repeat? You are going to be observing them during that whole response during your lesson observation. When you teach the lesson, you'll see list A. There's a list A and list B. You always teach list A. If you notice during your observation that a lot of kids are making errors, then you're just going to go ahead and teach list B tomorrow. So I'm not going to add any more skills. I'm just going to teach list B. Different words, but same skill practice. So that comes from there. You are going to be listening to them read. This is probably, these two things, I think, are the most valuable assessments you can get. Because if they're not able to apply these skills when they're reading, they really don't have these skills yet. As Trish was saying, if they don't have it automatic, then it's not going to come. So if the kids aren't able to read the passages, then we need to go back and do some more teaching or kind of pause where we are. You do have what are called mastery tests, which is your third. The mastery tests that's going to be in the back of your assessment. You're going to run those. And they're a one-on-one. But it only is going to assess those individualized skills. It's only going to assess, do they have their sounds and do they have their sight words? But it doesn't mean are they applying it, and how quickly are they applying it, how efficiently are they. But at least it tells you, I don't want to go on. So at the every 10 lessons in the beginning, you're going to do one of these. You're going to see it behind those 10s, so behind 10, 20, 30, 40, you're going to see, it's going to tell you it's time for assessment, but it's also going to have this interpretation and analysis direction for you. It's going to say most of your kids got this, this, and this, move on to the next lesson. If a lot of your kids miss this, go back and teach this lesson. Or if a lot of kids, and it's going to give you ideas of what to do. So it's not just, well, there's their data, but it helps tell you, how do you interpret that data? Where do I go next? So don't forget to look at those. Many times when I get to a 10, I knew it was there, I give my placement assessment, but never go back and consult that data. So know that that's there. Or not consult the data, but consult the interpretation. In extension, you're going to do a mastery test every 5 lessons. You got heavy stuff that you're teaching. So you don't want to go 10, you're going to go every 5. All right, now is probably a good time to break for our lunch. Because we're going to come back and I'm going to model some of these. So you got your big overview. You know where SIPPS fits in. You know what it teaches. I've told you kind of the most important parts with clear, concise, oral. I've told you what the your assessments look like, the structure. When we come back from lunch, I'm going to start to model those routines. So you have a really good handle of what that looks like. I'll even help you leverage. If you only want to get really good or have the time to get really good at certain routines, I'll let you know which ones are the most powerful routines. And then you can keep adding more to your wheelhouse as you go along. But I'll model those afterwards. So Jody had told me a 40-minute break, but how about we come back at 1 o'clock, 45 minutes, I can do that. And then we'll just go till 2. We'll have that last hour to get a chance to really ask questions and have you some Everybody good with that? Okay, but I'm going to start right at 1. So maybe that little 5 minutes. Right at 1, I'm going to start. Okay, going.